Probably before she was born.
And Jay Corson is a former select person, and he lives on the island full time. And Jay's wife might have been coming to the island her whole life. So
About the same length of time as Gretchen.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe Gretchen and Karen shared Thanksgiving together in New Jersey, if I recall.
Yes.
So I'll call the meeting to order. We have all the team members, 4 team members. It's 2:03 p.m. We have no members of the public other than Ellie, so I'll continue with the introduction. Ellie is an intern working for GP COG, Greater Portland Council of Governments, and I believe she's assigned full-time to work with the Shebig Climate Action Team. Recent graduate of that great school in southern Vermont, Middlebury, and she lives in Portland. So the next item on the agenda is the solar array purchase versus continue to lease discussion. I don't know where to start. Maybe in a lot of the paperwork that we got, which was the purchase proposal from Revision Energy, there was a 1-page document that was purchase PPA versus buyout cash flow analysis. Maybe we could walk through that, and then that would help us understand the terms and where the potential savings come from. Unless you have some upfront things you wanted to share, Ellie?
Not necessarily. I think, has everyone had a chance to peruse through some of those materials just to get a sense of, what the terms of the PPA are versus, some of the arguments the Climate Action Team made and Revision has made last year?
Okay. So, Chip, there was a colored page in that same.
I believe it's the cash flow page.
Yeah, PPA versus buyout cash flow analysis is one of those documents, Chip. You had converted it to a PowerPoint in Basecamp. Go under tasks and go to solar array. It's in the first section, solar array. There's 14 items in there. Yep. Keep going. You're going to get to it. Keep going. That one right there. You could make that as big as possible. That would be good. So maybe just walk us through what the various columns are, like the PPA rate and whatever.
Sure thing. So I guess starting with the CMP generation data, that's just CMP's log of how many kilowatt hours the solar array is producing in any given month since it came online in the end of 2018. Then their accompanying average utility rate for that year. So that would be under their small general service standard offer, which is what all 6 of the town accounts are. And then net energy billing credit value here. This is how the town gets its savings under this PPA. Basically, under the PPA, the town agrees to purchase all of the kilowatt hours produced by the array. And the way that works is the state has a one-to-one net energy billing program for solar producers. So basically, however many kilowatt hours they produce, they get a credit equal to the exact price of that number of kilowatt hours on their bill. So they can effectively eliminate their bill if they size their array correctly. And that's what Revision has basically done for us. This array covers about 99% of the town's demand over the past 5 or so years of our data. So basically, Revision gets credits from CMP for all of the kilowatt hours generated, and that's what this value is. And they sell them to us at a discounted rate. So this is what CMP's valuation of what the solar array is worth, like what the energy we've produced is worth. So that's what basically Revision gets that credit, and we gives it to us indirectly. So we get this value from CMP credited from our bill. And then what we pay to Revision is a PPA rate determined. It changes every year under the PPA, but we pay a fixed amount per kilowatt hour to Revision. So in 2019, that was, 0.1265 cents per or dollars per kilowatt hour. So that amounts to a quarterly PPA payment to Revision. So let's see, for any, let's take March 2019, we got a net energy billing credit of about $1,500 and then paid Revision this price per kilowatt hour for 9,000 kilowatt hours. So we paid Revision this amount, and the calculation of our savings is just the difference between those two.
It's the column that says PPA generation data.
So this is a good question John asked that I have not yet figured out, and I think Steve Hinchman would probably be the person to ask. CMP generation versus PPA generation. I'm imagining that that's just, CMP has its own meters for what the town is producing, and the PPA, Revision, is put in meters, I think. I don't know why those numbers are different. I had assumed maybe it had something to do with the power consumed by the inverters, converting the electricity from DC to AC usable power. But sometimes CMP has recorded more generation than the PPA. So I don't know what that's about.
The reason I was asking that is that the last column, the green column, seems to be the NEB credit column minus the PPA payments column.
Correct.
Yep. And is there actually a payment made to PPA, or?
There's a payment made to Revision under the PPA.
And that payment would have been $738.97 that month?
Correct.
Okay.
And basically, in exchange, we've gotten a credit from CMP worth $1,500, resulting in net savings of $790 for that month.
And who gets that credit?
The town gets that credit. So Revision, we basically get these net energy credits on our bill indirectly through Revision. Revision sells its credits to us. So the town is the recipient of the credits, and in exchange, we pay Revision this discounted rate per kilowatt hour, resulting in these figures.
And does actual cash come to the town?
It's not a check. It's basically, we have not had, when we get our CMP bill, because the solar array accounts for 98% plus of the town's demand, we don't pay for electricity via CMP. So what it does is it's not cash in the bank, but it is a credit on our bill that reduces our bill as much as possible, typically only leaving the $40 or $42 basic service charge every month, which no amount of solar generation will eliminate that. That's just the price of connection.
So Chip, I think maybe the next document is on an annual basis. I don't know. There's one on an annual basis that's speaks, it's got all these numbers, but that one right there. Yeah, and my head spins for some reason, Jim, related to the same questions you have. It's like, how much are we paying for electricity? And there's, three parties involved.
Well, I'm trying to follow the money.
Where the bill's going. I
Different
couldn't get it
currencies.
straight.
It's a super complicated payment system, definitely. But the difference between staying under the PPA or buying the array is right now, we pay roughly $40 a month to CMP for the right to be connected to the grid. And then we pay Revision this PPA rate times the amount of electricity generated. So basically, Revision is our electricity provider, and we pay a discounted rate to them for electricity. If we own the system, we would continue to pay that CMP connection fee, $40 a month, but we would basically not have an electricity bill, assuming that the array continued to produce the amount that the town demands. So what we would eliminate is generation times the PPA rate.
So just again, I'm gonna be ignorant here. Who paid to build the array? Revision?
Mhm.
And how did they get paid back for that?
There are a whole slew of federal and state funding buckets. So the PPAs
They
typically
manufactured their own capital, is what you're saying. Okay.
they've gotten some meaningful tax credits out of all of this from federal buckets of money and probably state as well. And the reason these PPAs come with buyout terms starting at year 7 typically is because Revision has, as of last year, they've gotten all the tax benefits they're going to get out of this. So now they don't care about owning it anymore. They basically, like, the array is built, they've gotten all the money that comes with that, and now they're willing to sell.
So related to that, if we look at this chart and look at 2025, and so the PPA rate, it says, is 0.1397. So that's what we're paying to Revision for the solar generation, the multiple of that times the kilowatts, right?
Yes.
Okay. And but the utility rate is 0.7179. And so isn't the person that's being paid for the generation of those same kilowatts is there a 3 or 4 cent benefit to Revision if that's the actual utility rate?
I don't know how Revision's profiting off of the credit transfer. So they must, it must cost less than, $13.1397 per kilowatt hour for Revision to generate the electricity. So, they're probably making money from that figure. And then, this utility rate, that's what a kilowatt hour is worth on the general market under the standard offer. So I don't think Revision is claiming any of the difference between the utility rate and their PPA rate. I think they're making money from the PPA rate they've set, is my assumption.
But if I look at this on that year 7 you're focusing on, John, if the solar generation is 73,504 kilowatt hours, is that what we're saying? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Then the PPA rate would be about $10,000. I don't see the number 10,000 anywhere on this line.
That's because they haven't calculated. I mean, there's just no column that says how much did we pay Revision. This is PPA savings. So what instead they've included is 73.5 times the utility rate. That's what we would pay if we were not under a PPA or did not own a solar, if there was no solar involved. So that figure minus what we actually paid revision. So the difference between those two values is this PPA savings column. We could add another column in if desired. That
Okay.
just has
Well, that would be about $10,000 is the difference. So, okay. All right.
Yeah, so what we don't. Okay. Yeah, so we're paying 13 cents a kilowatt hour now, and we wouldn't pay anything for those kilowatts in the future if we owned the array.
right.
The only cost of operating the array is whatever electric the array uses itself, maintenance, insurance, and the other things that are over here in the other columns, perhaps.
Yeah, so we can talk through some of those if that's helpful, some of the costs associated with ownership.
Yeah, so why don't we keep going through the different columns to make sure we understand for starters?
Okay. This NEB savings, I wish I had the sheet up so I could see the formula. I'm pretty sure this is what our savings would be if we owned the array. I should double check that.
No, I think that's correct.
I think that may be the utility rate times the utilization.
Yes, that's correct. So that's the solar generation times the utility rate. So that is what we would save under an ownership scenario relative to the, couple thousands we're saving a month under the PPA. So that's what that means.
An important part in this calculation is CMP. These utility rates would be CMP's standard commercial rate, I'm assuming, and everything after 2026 is projection. May or may not be correct. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and that's one of the most challenging parts of this decision to make in a environment so uncertain right now. We don't know what will happen with utility rates, especially in a tariff situation, trade war with Canada. We get under our small general service standard rate, 50% of our electricity is coming from New Brunswick. Historically, electricity hasn't been wrapped up in tariff scenarios, but that's absolutely not out of the question. And even, natural gas, if there's a 10% tariff on natural gas, that's going to hike up the CMP standard rate, definitely. So I think that is hard to project. I've tried to understand, I've done some research to see if there are any experts who are offering, locally oriented opinions about what that's going to look like. And I just haven't had any luck. So that's a huge question mark, definitely.
Totally different question off of the chart, but there's Jay, if I recall, Jay, when you talked about this, there's a pay down schedule. It's cheaper to buy it out year after year, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so it goes
Yep.
down to about $7,000 in year 25 of the PPA, so that's 2038. But we have to think about how at that point we've lost a lot of the cost savings that would come with
Right.
buying it out
And,
earlier.
and what is the buyout right now?
Let me pull it up.
78,000, something like that, I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
sounds right.
there's a gain of about 3,500 a year in price point. Like in 20 years, it would be 70 some odd thousand cheaper. So
Yeah, it's free at the end of 20 years. Or
right,
whatever.
but so if I'm following this right, every year it's cheaper by 3,500 to buy the thing, but we're paying $10,000 in cash every year to buy another year.
Correct.
But if the maintenance isn't that high, that seems like a no-brainer, but I don't know.
So
Right.
under last year's analysis that Steve did, he said staying, well, actually, that's what this document reflects at the bottom. If we stayed in the PPA through year 25, we're looking at 103,000 in savings versus had we purchased last year. So this is going to be a similar figure to if they decided to purchase this year. That's 100,000 more in savings over the lifetime of the array, and the array will likely have a lifetime that extends significantly beyond year 25 anyway, so could be bigger as well.
But the town has to maintain it if it buys it, correct?
Yes, and Revision has also in their offer letter they sent last year, there was discussion of operations and management, some type of agreement. They priced out $1,200 a year for that, which we can. It wouldn't include, like, we'd still be liable if like parts failed. We'd have to pay for replacement, but they would cover kind of routine maintenance, monitoring, that type of thing.
And
Yeah,
who
so-
calculated the insurance?
Revision. I find it kind of astounding that that's only $500 a year, but I have
If
no
they're
further.
willing to sell it to us at that price, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so back on the operations and management fee, I kind of viewed that like if you had an oil burner and you had an oil burner service contract, they're not doing
Yep.
much. They're not doing much for that OM and asset management other than guaranteeing they will respond in a certain time to fix the problem. And the time varies based on how much degradation there is in the solar efficiency. But then, once they're here, they're charging you $100 and something an hour for the repairman, and if you need any parts, you're going to pay for those too. The only thing that's in here for replacement parts is in year 15, 2033, you see the negative 18,000.
Yep.
A key component of the solar array are inverters. I think there are 6 inverters, and it's normal that the inverters get replaced after a certain amount of time. So that's in there. But, anything else would detract from any actual maintenance would detract from that 203 positive cash flow over the 25-year term.
When the 203 was figured out, did that include paying a management fee?
Yes, that included
Yeah.
O&M,
Management.
insurance, the buyout, and inverter replacement. And also, there's a column that says REC sales, that's renewable energy credit sales. So right now, basically, if we bought the array, the town could either decide to retire the renewable energy credits, and basically all they do is you sell them to some commercial entity usually, so that that entity can claim to consume more renewable energy. It doesn't mean that they're actually consuming the energy. It's kind of a marketing thing or compliance if they have, goals that they're required to reach in terms of their energy mix.
Is that
So
like carbon credits?
basically carbon credits. So right now, Revision presumably sells those. The town does not buy them. And so they've also included in this analysis with the $203,000 ultimate figure, that Revision a secondary contract for Revision to manage and sell those renewable energy credits. I don't know why it's only, I'm not sure why it's only 5 years here. Maybe that's just, I'd have to ask Steve about that, but both the operations and the REC sales are included.
It could be that these credits are only in the tax law right now through 2028.
maybe.
And with the current administration, 2028 doesn't mean anything.
On the flip side, it could be 2038, but the tax bill gets through this year, so you don't know. Who knows? Tax credits sound like something they're pushing for, but anyhow.
So just that, I have just a quick question. So you're saying, I see on this, based on this sheet, it says the purchase price is 84,000.
That was
And-
last year.
That was last year. So it's 70 something, 77 this year. So that would kind of come out of the 203,000.
No, that's included. So both you'll see in the buyout inverter replacement column, they've included the upfront cost of purchase and also the inverter replacement in year
Oh,
15.
that's the buyout plus an inverter replacement. Okay.
Yes. So this is
Oh,
like
I see.
annual
It's
net.
not I see. That's what okay.
So the 203,000 figure is net cash flow.
So net NEB savings. That's based on the utility rates that are just to the left of that.
Yes.
It's based on the two utility rates, the PPA rate and the utility rate.
This column that says net energy billing savings, that we should rename it because it's not entirely clear right now, but this is under a purchase assumption. So we would have nothing to do with the PPA rate. That's just the utility rate times the amount of electricity produced.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So those are assumptions, those utility rates. So if we went with a third party expert, he might come back with the same chart and he might have different utility rate assumptions in there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then back to the question about the legislature, I've read and basically, and I think you and I talked about it, Ellie, that Maine's solar laws related to what the utility companies pay for solar generation is more favorable than other states, perhaps. So can our situation be impacted by changes in net asset billing legislation?
Absolutely. Maine has pretty much the best net energy billing program in the country. It's 1-to-1, so super consumer friendly. And because of that, there have been some pretty significant lobbying efforts by utilities to rein it in or kill it. So right now in the State House, there are 4 bills under consideration to either eliminate this program as it stands or significantly restrict it. So we don't know what's going to happen there. There's a lot of misinformation that the utilities are putting out there about solar producers and the net energy billing program being the singular driver of higher utility rates, which isn't true. But we don't know what's going to happen to the net energy billing program, and if it dies or if it is restricted, it would be bad for us under the PPA or under a buyout. But one thing to keep in mind is under the PPA rate through year 25, revision has kind of fixed that in our signed contract, and they are allowed to come back to the table if there are policy changes that significantly change, the economics of staying under this PPA, which any of these net energy billing programs would. They can come back and renegotiate the terms, and if we can't agree, then they can dissolve the PPA then and there. So I think initially I was thinking, oh, maybe staying under this PPA during a time of uncertainty about what's going to happen with net energy billing, that might insulate us a little bit. But I think it's certain that revision would want to renegotiate the terms anyway, because otherwise it would just make no financial sense for them. So basically, it's a great program. right now it is under attack. We don't know what's going to happen with it, but any successful attacks will be will take a hit either way. I don't know what the lesser of evils is.
If this occurred and there was a dispute and we could not reach resolution, would the town just fall back on the commercial electricity supplier?
Yes, so if revision says we need to renegotiate the terms and the town does not like revision's new terms, the PPA would be dissolved early and revision would decommission the array. They would remove it entirely and the town would go back to just the regular utility rate.
But when you're done with that thought, I have a different line of thought.
Well, I guess a question on that. So, there's a 1-to-1. They pay whatever the commercial rate is for net energy billing. So if they change that to, they pay half the commercial rate just for convenience. And so instead of in 2026, instead of paying 18 cents per kilowatt hour, they're paying 9. Does that mean that and we're consuming those 72,700 kilowatt hours that are generated? Does that mean that we're only going to get 9 cents for those kilowatt hours? And we're going to be, or did the ones we consume, we get, I'm not articulating this too clearly.
I think I
under
see what you're saying.
net energy billing, those numbers will all go in half, and instead of 312 at the bottom, it'll be 116 if they cut it in half.
I mean, I guess the real question here, John, you're asking is, if we use what we generate, does it matter what the rate is?
Yeah, that's
If,
what
It
if
does.
we're just using what we generate.
It does matter because the way net energy billing works, it's not that our usage on CMP's bill says 0. They're recording everything we generate. It's just that we're generating exactly what we need to consume. So for everything we generate, we basically give it back to the grid, and CMP will give us a credit for that, which then negates our bill. But it's not that we are necessarily we're grid tied. So it matters that that's the way it works. It's not like just because we consume the electricity we produce on site, we're immune from that. It would basically half the value of our solar. And then, so we'd basically be paying, we'd be paying double.
Yep.
And the
Okay.
utility rate is the rate for everyone on CMP's system.
Yes, this is for the category the town accounts are under is small general service. So it's a small commercial service. So this is the standard offer in that category.
And the forecast rates on this column are just some 3% inflator or something.
Let's see. Utility costs escalator in the top left says 2.5%.
Okay. So this isn't locked in. This is just a guess.
Right.
Yep. Okay. So any other questions for understanding? I think you maybe had one, Chip.
Yeah, I do. I I can't remember everything I did in business school, but looking at the 203,000, it reminds you of life insurance present future values, and taking the 203,000 here, the future value of 203,000 based on 5%, if that's our borrowing rate. So if we took the $77,000 and bought a bond, used it, it's worth 5% to pay a bond off on that. So I don't know if I'm right in this, and you guys can double check it, but the future value of 203,000 in 18 years based on 5% is $85,000. So I think we have to do an opportunity cost of capital analysis and see, because that's the trouble. We're looking at the purchase price up top of today's, putting that much money in today might yield that much savings in 203,000. What this is saying is if we put $84,000 in the bank for 18 years at 5%, it would be the same amount of money. So we're doing it. I think we need to, I think that's one of the things that can be misleading about that number, 203,000. It's a long time from now.
Yeah, and the other issue I'd say is that the issue John was talking about, which is the risk of repair,
Right.
shifts under that scenario.
So, right. And yes, that's the unknown. And as they say, you're right. The asset management cost is just to come out and say, I'm going to come out and go through this checklist. And so that's all. This doesn't seem, well, we can talk about it later, but that's the analysis too, is what's the opportunity cost of capital, to invest
Right.
it, to get, anyway, that's it.
Yeah, we have to take that look and understand that. But does it make sense to ask Revision Energy to update this quote by a year? And at the same time, I don't know whether you had a chance to look at it, Ellie, is to pursue an independent evaluator of the value of our solar array. So you got a third party look at it who might know something about maintenance cost assumptions, better handle on the reality of the NEB legislation, etc., and then the assumptions based on the utility rate.
I spoke with Carol White yesterday, and she reached out to someone. I'm not sure if that contractor surfaced in the Climate Action Committee's discussion last year, but she reached out to inquire whether there would be any interest in doing that for us. If I don't know that she's heard back yet, but
Okay.
that could be a possibility.
Okay.
So, Ellie, if I might, if everything goes really well over the 25 years, we stand to save $200,000. Is that right?
I
Or
am not
203?
an economist who understands the assumptions behind like the utility rate escalator and all of that, but under a revisions analysis, yes, that's right. And I will say also that solar panels, their lifespan can be 40 years. So it might have 15 years of life after this. So this is a 25-year scope, but they're saving, there will be savings after that too. We can assume usually for every 20 years of life, there's a 10% degradation in generation in the technology's capacity. So 40 years down the line, it might be generating at 80% capacity, which is not great, but it's still significant.
Right. But what I'm trying to think in terms of is our best case scenario, let's just take the 25 years time frame, is that we end up 200 grand ahead. If, for instance, we need maintenance beyond what they've built in for the inverter replacement, that's going to take off from the 200. If the generation, the amount of solar generated, because I noticed on some of when you had the other chart up that did it monthly, the months widely varied. So I don't know. My concern is having somebody manage the system, how much it's going to cost to fix things when they break, and they will break.
Yeah,
where we're really going to end up. And that doesn't include the political costs of what happens if they get rid of the, some of the benefits that the government has built into this. And if they revise the one-for-one payment by CMP.
Yeah, I think those are
Those-
all valid concerns. I do want to note that your comment about the months varying widely, that is not a liability. That's basically the reason that net energy billing program started, because obviously summer months are going to generate more energy. So the idea is you might generate way more than you need in the summer. You rack up credits on your bill to use in the winter when you're not generating enough to cover your load. So it kind of evens out. I wouldn't worry about that piece of it. But yes, the maintenance stuff, the uncertainty in the legislature definitely are worth considering.
Yeah. And then in the end, we have the dismantle and get rid of cost.
Yeah, I think that was one of the points the climate action team was concerned about last year. And in my research, my understanding of it, I don't think that is something that we should factor into our decision now, because that's going to be, at least 20 years down the line. The solar industry has exploded in the past 10, which means the decommissioning industry is going to follow shortly. So I think the efficiency of that process, the options are going to have expanded significantly by the time we get to that point. I can't forecast that, but I also think, it sounds to me that this group would probably advise purchasing it, if not in the next 24 years, on year 25 when it's worth 7,000. In which case the town would assume responsibility for decommissioning anyway. So if the town is going to purchase this ever, that cost will be its responsibility. So maybe we never purchase it, in which case that is a cost that should factor into the decision. But I think it makes sense to purchase at some point. It's more about when we purchase it, in which case the decommissioning cost is kind of a sunk cost.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions for Ellie? Anything else you want to share with us, Ellie?
I don't think so. I think we touched on everything.
Okay, does the group think it makes sense to ask revision to update their purchase?
The buyout cost?
Yeah,
I'd say yes, but do we want to have them in addition put some larger number for repair? Presumably they know some stuff that we don't know in that regard.
Yeah. And apparently they just spent 80 grand in fixing things.
I can actually speak to that. That had to do with inverter replacement. So usually solar panels are expected to live 25 to 30 years at least. But the inverters need to be replaced every 10, 15 years. So every solar panel comes with an expected inverter replacement during the kind of midlife crisis. This array, all 6 inverters were replaced in the first 3 to 4 years, 2020 to 2022, which is not normal, hugely expensive. And revision says that was, they think it was a hardware issue associated with that batch of inverter manufacturing, and it had happened with other arrays that they built and operated. And so they say that's isolated, and we should be fine now. The current inverters have a 10-year warranty, and we are supposed to replace them anyway in effectively year 11. So they're covered, I don't know what the warranty entails, but they're warranted basically through the rest of their expected lifetime. And the arrays are warranted as well for, I don't know what it was.
Well, but that raises a question. If they spent 84,000 to replace the inverters and then they're forecasting 18,000 in year 15, why the discrepancy?
They replaced several inverters multiple times. It was bad. There might be more to it. I only know about the inverter failures, so worth asking them to confirm, what have all your maintenance costs been? But
So
yeah,
I
that
think it makes sense to get an updated proposal from Revision, but at the same time, as we're doing that, we might, I'm hearing 4 or 5 or 6 questions that we would have of them. One's related to inverter cost. What have they paid? And why do they only have 18,000 in here now? Another one might be related to how did they forecast the future utility rate? Another one might be there's only 5 years of renewable energy credit sales on here. What's the review of that? I would suspect they're following the legislation changes on net energy buyback plans closely. Ask them what they know about that. And perhaps those questions would indicate we have some serious concerns. So, maybe they don't want to waste their time updating the quote until we have the answers to those questions. I don't know.
Every time I bump into Steve on the boat or something, he asks how we're coming on the decision, and they'd be more than happy to make a presentation.
Okay.
So
Right.
there's no reason not to ask him.
Well, maybe that's the next step. Maybe they prefer to have a presentation and a discussion, but, all right.
And of course, the other question is, if this is such a good deal, why are you so interested in selling?
Well, the answer to that's probably all the tax.
I know I'm being facetious here, but
And then you think Carol's pursuing an independent assessment of the value of our solar array?
she reached out to one person and has
Okay.
not yet heard back, but I will let you know if I hear more about that.
All right. I think we need to move on with our agenda, but thank you, Ellie.
Okay,
I know-
thank you.
Thank you very
Feel free
much.
to reach out
Today.
via email if you have any further questions I can help with.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I think Aaron joined us. Hello, Aaron.
Aaron,
Good afternoon, everybody.
You know more about solar than you need to, or maybe you have your own solar.
No, we're part of we're on the list. We get a portion of some credits in there.
Right. Okay, we're going to move on to review a summary of current fiscal year 26 capital reserve account recommendations. So Jim, I think I'm on the same wavelength as to what you were trying to do last year, which
yes, I like that.
last week. And so I went through all the work Chip has put into the master asset list and then made some updates based on Jay and I had a conversation about public works, and then I did a brief follow-up with Jeff Westcott, and then I went in and tweaked some of the public works numbers in the master asset list. And so this is what I came back with that I think we're fairly comfortable with. Under paving, we would recommend an $88,000 annual amount. We were comfortable with an additional 25 this year. Ambulance, there's nothing going into the reserves. We calculate 26 needed. So we would recommend putting in 30 that they don't have in there. Public works, the annual reserve needed, and it's all driven by 6 big pieces of equipment, and those replacement years says you need a little over 100,000 a year. The current plan's 50. We would say you ought to add 50. Fire department, if you bond the first 2 fire trucks, you need 91,000 a year. So add 50 to the 50 they have there. So in the budget draft, those might be in the wrong no, the budget draft's got 125 in there. Where our work would say we think those reserve assets that are listed on this sheet, we need another 165.
And do we want to say where they get that from?
Right, and we had the discussion last week with Carol about there's 300 being put into the Stone Wharf Reserve, and she was going to reach out to DOT and say, when we're talking about grants, what percentage of the project do we need to have in there? If the town goes out to, can you bond the matching funds? Is that looked upon differently?
Right.
So whether or not they see the wherewithal to reduce the Stone Reserve account and increase some of those, I think this year, directionally, this is the message that we need to review with them on April 16th when they said they would put an hour for budget discussion on the regular select board agenda.
I'd also add that we should say something about the fact that this is everything we've stumbled across, but it may not be comprehensive.
Right.
Yeah,
It
there is
definitely isn't comprehensive.
that one item that there's a lot of the building facilities too that are look like they found some extra things that the shed buckling, the hot water heater, the oil burner's old. We identified some of them. The roof, the furnace, I think we were still guessing at that. But anyway, that one, when you look in the master sheet, is still, we're short on it. So I don't know why building facilities look to me to be they're very complicated, like the fire department, but they were big. I'm
wondering if one of our ultimate recommendations ought to be that they, by, let's say, December of this year, do an actual capital replacement maintenance plan with like an engineer or someone who comes in and really looks at what they've got and establish a policy at the Board of Selectmen around what their future capital needs are, to then create the context within which to look at future reserve accounts. Because, Chip has done way beyond yeoman's duty here trying to follow all this stuff. And it's still, we're relying on someone interpreting from the staff level what they really need and what it costs,
Yeah, very true. Very true. All those items in the building facilities. I mean, maybe what we're suggesting is enough in terms of the overall volume, but they do need to really support that. And you're right. I mean, a lot of those numbers go back 2008, 2015. I mean, they're old. So
yeah, it's probably time they hired a professional to. We're like we said last week, we're doing a plan for a capital plan.
Right.
They need someone to do a capital plan,
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all. I
Just for
wanted to mention
reference, most of the stuff that says 2008 on it that's just from when we became a town.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, but we're using numbers that are that old. A lot of them, wherever they came from. So we've got 2000. So in other words, our recommendation and our best guess would be based on old numbers. I didn't know it was 2008 was, right, when we were a town, but that's a very complicated one. that whole matrix of all the building
Well,
facilities.
and a lot of that stuff may not even exist anymore. It may be just stuff that was on an accounting sheet when the town got established, and
Right,
I mean, you just don't know. I mean,
yeah.
this is
It's
beyond the scope of what we can do. I mean,
There's 20 items, right, and 4 came up just through Jay and John's discussions
Right.
with employees. So we get 20 items on that. So, okay, I just wanted to mention that.
yeah, no, you're correct.
Yeah, I was looking at the buildings and facilities on the master list. What we have so far shows $30,000 a year. But, again, well, most of the items on there, no,
So, well,
yeah,
and
most of them are very old, estimates of, when the repair estimate was made. So, I guess my view of what you said, Jim, and I think you were recommending have a professional do an assessment.
I mean, I think it seems to me you raised 2 points last week that were important. One is that Vika needs to somehow coordinate the response of the various staff and prioritize stuff. And the second is the Board of Selectmen need to say, yes, this is our capital replacement policy. And I think they just need to go through that process so that if we or someone else is this same spot next year, we have harder data to try to recommend reserve accounts from.
Right.
And also of those 20 items in that list, 5 of them are maintenance items. And I mean, I just guessed at 10%.
Oh yeah, I mean it's
I have no idea.
Right. Right.
Anyway, yeah.
Okay. But do you think that the list that we just looked at is sufficient, or do we want to tweak it for that discussion on the 16th?
Are there any repairs we know they think they need to do in the next 2 years that we know for sure?
In the building, Jim?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, they seem to be, the salt shed seem to be in a bad way and been downgraded by the insurance company.
That's bad.
And that's not good if that's going to collapse or something. I don't know. So, septics and roofs, and I mean they can go on for a while. I don't, furnace. That I guess is they're operating at some.
Another way to tackle this would simply be to flag those and say, we've been told these are issues. It's hard to assess how quickly, and that almost becomes a preface for why they need to hire a professional to get themselves a capital replacement plan. I mean,
I agree.
I really like your idea, Jim, of having somebody come out, a professional, doing a professional evaluation of the buildings and
I'm doing this in self-defense because I believe we were all sworn in for 3 years on this committee. And I'd like that professional to be finished before we're here next spring in the same spot,
Yeah. No, I agree. And this is the most shaky data that we have in this area of building facilities. So it's yeah.
Okay. Here's what I would propose. I think based on the conversation you had with Vika, she wants to know that we ran this back by Public Works and the fire department. So I'm thinking I'll send her an email maybe I'll send her and Bob an email with this list that says, we're moving towards having a discussion of reserve accounts, some possible changes to reserve accounts in the meeting on the 16th. this list is directionally where we're going. We have some other comments. We'll have some other comments about needs to do a professional assessment of buildings and facilities.
And equipment. I think they should fold in all of it.
Anything in that category, 90/30?
Well, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, confirm what the priorities are here by this process, you know?
Okay. But send that email to Bob and Vika and tell Vika that I'm pretty sure that Jeff is okay with this list because we had a recent discussion, but I will double back and talk to the fire department and make sure Ralph isn't surprised that we're recommending that more money go into the fire department and the ambulance reserves. That makes sense?
Ralph will be
Yes.
pleasantly surprised. I don't think he'll be negatively surprised.
You never know.
He's-
I've been surprised by Ralph before, so I don't want to be surprised again. In my opinion, that's about as far as we're getting on this asset work in this fiscal year 26. And as you rightfully point out, Jim, we can speak to how the process needs to be integrated into the department work come the fall, and perhaps highly recommend that some professional assessments be done.
And we'd like to have it before they ask us the same questions next spring.
Right. Okay. Anything else on this subject? Walk through draft slides for the 426 community presentation.
That's the single most important slide you've got, John, right here.
You're looking at the bond debt?
Yep.
That's the one,
Yep.
that's the one
Yeah.
you put up.
That's that one there, yeah. Yeah, and it does show the total amount, and it does show, and I think, as I thought about it, I think you get back to what people are thinking and what message and what we think our audience will look like, and what questions that they'll have. So you've got to try to anticipate that. But it's good for them to know that the bond debt overall is going down. I don't know if you guys are planning on talking about the future costs. We have some well, maybe we just go through it or just start in the beginning and see. I don't know.
Could we label that table bond debt payments instead of bond debt?
Yeah,
Because it isn't the total debt, it's the payments, annual
bond
payments. Yeah,
payments.
annual payments.
yeah.
Alexa, turn off.
Yeah.
And I hope that people look at it and they have a sense of what
Jim, this is not the payments. This is how much debt is outstanding in each of those years.
Well, this is not, thought this was the payment each year.
No.
Those are the payments. Yeah,
Oh.
those are the payments.
This is bond debt by year.
oh, okay.
Is that what this is?
Yeah.
No,
I don't think so. I think this is the annual payment
those
schedule.
are the annual payments.
No. You mean,
Well, you're
you mean,
paying
for
about
instance,
six.
you for this, that shows this year we're spending $500,000 in bond payments.
I
Correct.
think it's true.
No,
That's what I saw in the tables.
Well, I believe in this folder I have the bond debt that I pulled out of the one of the budget schedules is municipal bond for 2026 is 455,000. And then the school has the MSAD 51 debt, which is 37,000. So it's four.
Yeah, yeah, we have
which is right
millions
there.
of dollars. Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
yeah. We have millions of dollars of debt, right?
Hang on, I gotta get that chart in front of me.
All right, we going back to slide one?
Yeah, just go through,
This, Jay, we're not leaving it. Or
we'll
we're not
we'll
done.
get back to it. But these here, any changes, comments, pretty much an introduction and purpose, and these are kind of just talking points, so you guys will say whatever you want to say to add to
Where's
it.
the one that says, take the bullet for Board of Selectmen?
Take the bullets.
For
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen, yes.
Yeah, all right, I'll put
No,
that in.
no, no.
Okay,
However,
we'll
my
put
world, consultants get hired to take bullets.
bullets.
So
We'll put that in the presenter notes. Okay. Okay, capital planning, and this may seem redundant to us. I felt that there are some people, and myself included, before I first get into any of this, what is all this about? So I think it's their general understanding. What is capital planning? Tax rate to support. There's budgets for operations. There's the asset management. We have the hard and soft, and then the reserve accounts to support those. And then bonds are for long-term and large. And
yeah, that's a good summary there.
it covers it. It's just kind of explains things. That's to give them some sense without showing them asset worksheets or anything like that. I don't think you certainly don't want to get into that. But well, maybe you do, but that's up to you. I think it's the things can quickly derail if you give too many numbers and stuff and people are looking for it. But just to give them a sense of that there is a lot of stuff that they have to look at, the town assets. I'm just, naming a few of them, but there are a bunch of them that are small and they do add up.
Do those percentages relate to real assets on your list, Chip?
Yeah, that's just,
So what's the 7% asset?
that one probably, I'd have to look at it, but I mean, that might be the Stone Pier, because that's such a big one. That's $1
Well,
million.
why don't you type that as the first detailed one? It
So-
seems to be the three biggest ones ought to be listed in the list.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
because they're single big things,
Okay, good idea. List 3 or identify okay.
I mean, the rest of the characterizations are very good, but
Yeah,
probably
Well,
list the three biggest ones anyhow, just so it's. For instance, the schools ought to be somewhere in there, aren't they? Or is that a separate chart?
that's probably separate, but identify I'll just put 5 largest assets.
The school's in good hands, so we're not that focused on the school yet.
Well, we aren't focusing on. Yeah, they've kind of been separate anyway, but that's a good.
I was
it's a good-
saying that to tell Aaron we're totally comfortable with what the school's doing.
Yeah, well, they had a big year with the
We like the direction the budget's going.
yeah.
Until it isn't.
Until it, well, they won't have that savings next year. Was it next year or the year after? But yeah, but right now that's all you can look at. And but they have brought in, yeah, and that's a good question. Do you so people are looking at this and they're going to ask about the school. You'll want to speak to that, just as, without putting up a slide or something, just say I'll put it, I'm typing in presenter's notes here, and I'll change the slides to read to them. But anything that you want to put in there that you'll be looking at when you're presenting, just to remind you to, maybe you just mention that the school is a separate entity and look in good shape, whatever you want to say. Okay. Yes, no, maybe. Okay. Committee deliverables. These are the main things we're doing. There's two of them, and is there too much here? Should it just be one slide?
See the second slide right now.
So,
And you guys, I'll just say these are posted on Basecamp, so you can easily go back there, later on the coming week and look at them and just say, on slide 5, the slides are numbered on what you have. Maybe we need to add or subtract something, but
yeah, I don't know that we need to, at this point, say much about property valuation
Yeah.
and revaluation.
How about we say monitor tax base?
yeah, I wonder about that. I think that it's part of the capital plan, right? Is the property valuation or revaluation?
Yeah, and I guess maybe the monitor's the word that I'm, our concern is what can we afford to do and what's the impact on taxes, right? And
Or on fees in some cases.
get our arms around that, we need to know what the what the total assessed value is.
Well, you can use another
Right,
word.
the phrase tax base is the standard term for that.
You want to just say analyze tax base? Am I hearing that?
Well, I guess I'd say it's understand tax base and impact that capital costs have on taxes. I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Okay.
Impact
I think it's
capital
good to have something.
spending has on taxes.
Capital spending is the phrase you want in there, John? Yeah.
Alexa, turn on.
Impact capital spending on taxes.
Okay. And I put in, I mean, I don't know if I did it or it was there or whatever, but anyway, these support strategic planning just to,
Do we need to
Yes.
put the new firehouse listing also in that or not?
Well, so related to that, if you took that off there and we just added it somewhere, I think we need to have a listing of the big projects.
well,
Bob,
there
Bob
are
Early-
here.
is it there?
Well, it's later in so it's a little redundant. And so your capital needs tomorrow. So right here, we're identifying what we work on. So we don't have to have, if we're gonna, you don't want to have it necessarily twice. If it's in the going forward area, which it is down here. I mean, that's a whole, it's not laid out on a particular slide, but it does speak to the big stuff that's coming.
Where does Stone Pier appear later?
It's not here. What we do is probably figure out how to get rid of this here, and not list, we're talking, so I can just dump it here for now, those items. And then clean up this slide so that it will be you'll be talking about the future stuff. If here you're just talking about strategic planning for large
Investments.
investments. Okay. So yeah, we're talking just quick description of what they do. Okay, and then we'll put the specifics down here, and we can get to that in a minute. Okay, so they don't appear twice. Roads. This was just to make the point that I think it was surprising to me, and I started looking at roads as I drive around. I'm like, Herb's right. You start looking at them. I look even on Division, which they did, Jim. Coming up and down the hill. I mean, some of these cracks start to appear, and so this is just to be a very quick graphic. Say, this is what can happen. There's a sweet spot in terms of balancing maintenance with cost as it goes further down.
Are the roads the biggest capital asset?
I don't know if they're bigger than the school. The roads, they list them. This is their listing is that they are worth the paving. Well, let's say they list, if I add that up, it's $2.6 million. If these numbers that they had in their spreadsheet, if you add up the cost of all the roads, whatever that is, at 2.6 million. So they would be, I guess, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying you might put in this slide, roads are the biggest capital asset, and then show this. I mean,
Yeah, okay. Our largest, okay.
or just largest capital asset. Yeah, great.
Okay.
But explain why you're doing this is because it's the biggest asset.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, good idea. Big picture trends and review. This was kind of right out of John's bond debt overview graph. We've got that down below, so I can get rid of that. Reserve account history. I don't know if those are things that we have. Capital spending as percentage of budget. Are those things, John, that you have numbers for that we would create a chart for?
Well, the reserve account history and the capital spending as a percentage of budget, I only have 2 or 3 years of history.
Yeah. Okay. We kind of have the tax increases on the next slide.
Suppose you use this slide, since it says it's the big picture, suppose you used it to introduce concepts like these ones you've got here, although I think I'd put axiom down below. I wouldn't put it first, but in other words, it's John creating his educational platform here, I guess, or something, saying, here's the things we need to look at and here's what they mean, or something like that.
What would you boil that down to?
Well, I think what he's got here is good. What you've got here is good. I mean, probably tax base maybe goes first, capital spending second, reserve account. The notion that a reserve account is kind of a interim position between bonding and budgeting, that it's creating piggy banks, that kind of thing.
I think even though we've got the graph of the bond debt, I think that's part of the big picture is that the existing debt is substantially reduced between
Right. Maturing debt, yes. That is the biggest picture, frankly.
Well, it is, but one thing that I worried about was that there are, and I, as much as I like this graph here, it makes me wonder if it makes people over optimistic, because if you start adding in some of these other things,
Oh, don't worry.
don't worry. Okay.
As soon as they see the budget for the Stone Wharf,
Yeah.
all optimism will disappear.
Well, that's all I just, I don't want them to, that's all. Okay.
Well, type in there another one besides maturing debt, put in new critical capital needs.
Yeah.
That's another concept.
Versus,
Yeah, okay.
There are going to be some of those. So
I'd say new critical large capital needs, or
yes, large. Yes, right. Gigantic.
that's right. You
That's
got good tech, good.
I
Good.
can
Very
have,
good. Good way to tackle it. Yes.
I can,
You get rid of one of the capital spending items, maybe the second one. You got it twice.
I can have the word large do the anvil drop with sound from the top if you want. No. Okay. So no,
Yeah, so
Okay.
capital spending is in there twice, Chip.
Okay.
Capital-
Yeah, delete that one. Yeah.
You want to,
Axiom, I think, can still go down further, maybe even last.
you even want that in this list?
Yeah, good point.
That's more of a bill collecting on our part.
Yeah, it's a good point.
okay, because there are some revenue trend. Okay, so take Axiom out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, how's this list look? And we get time to
You might
change.
get rid of history for a reserve account and put reserve account roll or something like that.
And I'll publish this PDF of what we're just finishing up on, so you can take a look at it and keep working on it, whatever.
And in your notes, it says John educates public to everything he knows.
Okay.
Oh, did I tell you I'm not here that day? No.
John is the lead guy. Okay. All right. Inflation, this was, and this is really just a visual, but I thought, there's charts that you can have showing inflation rates, and we could have had lines going up and down and up and down. My message here was that, and I can take your numbers, Jim, and divide them out
It
by
doesn't
two.
matter. I mean, I think it's a great graphic.
I think
Yes.
I don't think it'll change much, but with those new numbers, but I do appreciate that. And it was really weird when I pressed your link that you sent me, it said not available at this time. So I'm like, oh,
Apparently, you need to be a professional like I
I
am to
guess
know how to
they
do
knew
that.
they knew I was not, I thought I was getting doged out or something, but so
It's a
so
trade association thing.
it,
So
it was, so the
why
purpose,
does this say school bonding on it?
oh, that could just be a total mistake. No, I don't. Oh, this is, yeah, see, I haven't finished this because I don't want it to be, I don't want people to have to look left and right to tell the graph. And so I haven't finished.
I wouldn't complicate this graph. This is no, keep our taxes there. I think comparing just the simple graph is very important.
Well, and so it's compounded in that they get added every year. So the purpose was a couple of things. One, to show that, okay, the town, is doing a pretty good job. They're following the national inflation rate, basically, and they're lower than it. They're 6% lower. Of course, you can use, you can say they're 6% lower, or you can actually, you're correct in stating they're 20% lower or 25% lower, if you want to make it sound even better. Whatever that is, 21 divided.
Sometimes a visual does it all on its own.
Well, I think that's all. It's just to show it, but it also, the other message is, you're a little light. You need a little more kitty in the pot, a pot in the kitty, or kitty in the pot, or whatever.
Well, this is the don't complain chart.
Well, right, and all right. So okay.
So just the bottom, it's 2024 on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Do we have through 2025?
No, I mean, I couldn't, we didn't have new taxes. I was going by the tax assessor. That's the latest that he sent us.
Yeah, but that last year he sent us was fiscal year 25. That's my point. I don't want to confuse myself or the people looking at this.
Oh, his thing said 2025? Well, maybe I made a mistake.
Yeah,
Um,
the 8% increase was in 2025, fiscal year 2025.
Is it possible, Chip, that
this is what he sent me. Let me just show you.
Yeah, so in June of 2024, that was the tax increase, but it's fiscal year
Oh,
2025.
okay.
That's all I'm saying.
So you would like all those numbers on the left changed by 1 year?
Yes.
Yeah, and then I
Okay.
don't, yeah,
That-
so
no problem. That's no problem. Okay.
and doesn't he have 16 in there, 2016 on the chart? Oh, you're right. That's fiscal 2017. Okay,
Right.
right. Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I just took, this is what he gave us.
Yeah. That's good.
how many years has you got there? 3, 6, 9, and you've got 8 on the chart. But I don't know how we line up the inflation in that we're in half years. That's, whatever.
Well, if you use just the January 1st on that chart I sent you, Chip, if you use the January 1st index from
Right.
20, whatever it is, 17 to 2025, you'll be able to match it up to the middle of the year. So,
Yeah, yeah. And again, as you say, it's the important point. I don't think anyone's going to be looking hard at the numbers. It's really
No.
the
it's-
line.
I'm just against the one person that might have a question.
That's
yeah.
that guy named John Wren. He's sure to ask that. You wait. Okay. Okay. All right. This guy here. So I don't know what my note here was
Yeah,
for.
Part of the comments here in my mind is if you go back to 2026, we had $500,000 in annual bond payments. If we look out to, 2029, we're at 175, and that's before we take any credit for the Axiom bond payment, Axiom repayment of debt of 74,000. So you can argue that we go from 500 down to 100. So we pick up $400,000 in new capital spending dollars.
Potential.
Potential.
If
Don't
we
say
spend
spending,
anything
say
else.
potential. You're clearly hearing the voice of damaged body in some of my words.
Right.
History here. So,
Okay.
That's about
Anything else?
$6 million bond, right, Jay?
Yeah. Something like that.
All right.
That'll pay for half of the Stone Pier.
Yep.
half of phase one.
It'll pay for part of, it'll, yeah, who knows, South Road. And
You'll buy 2 fire trucks or something. Right?
well, that's the other thing. We can reverse this the other way. Oh God, but who knows about the future? But I think it's a good message to have that, people know what's coming up. And so there has been, there's some capacity there.
Yes.
Major needs, Stone Wharf, Town Valley. I'm sure I've got some ambulances, roads. Um,
So
You know-
somewhere here, I was picturing putting in the select board's view of the big projects by priority and listing the range of dollars.
did they do that? Did they give us that?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, we got the Bob Ernest view.
okay.
I think this is at least 2 slides, what you've got here right now.
Okay. Well, we can use this graph and duplicate it, and then I can add onto it the new thing. No, I don't want to do that.
No.
Okay, but
Let
that,
John have one good graph to show people the positive attitude.
and Jay will keep the door open, the side door, make sure that fire exits are cleared.
I'm in Philadelphia or somewhere further south. I'm way away from this.
That's
place.
right. You're, okay, so we'll get to select board priority,
if we're gonna use the select board priority list, I
yeah,
would just use the left-hand side of that list. Which is to say it lists the rank, the item, estimated cost high and low. I'd leave the rest of the comments and so forth off.
okay,
I think on your thing here, Chip, it would be useful to say under major needs have like 2 categories: replacing / maintaining current assets, and then the second is new major projects, because they're really sort of 2 big categories.
okay. Okay, this graph, John, funds available for investment. Is that something we have, or is that,
That's John's masterpiece. We've been following it.
oh, he's, all
I-
right.
I did 7 different versions of it in an Excel today.
I know, I put them in here.
You're going to write a dissertation on this by the time you're done, John.
The computer started shaking. Well, if you want something displayed, just send it to me. Okay, all right.
Chip,
Yeah.
under your
I'm-
capital needs tomorrow list here,
What'd you say, Jeff?
under the capital list needs tomorrow list,
Yeah,
you've got displayed. It says you got to correct the spelling on maintaining current assets. On
Oh, yeah.
maintaining, just
yes, it was underlined in red. I typed faster than I
Okay.
think. Okay. John will provide. Okay. Okay. So
This
these-
may actually end up being three slides, because this is critical stuff here.
Okay. Okay. All right, you're almost done. Going forward, committee value.
What does expanded bandwidth for fiscal needs mean?
John, that's, I think came from John, is it?
Yeah, well, I think this committee, so the town has had a lot of conversation about limited bandwidth when they talk about, with all the projects they've got going on and 5 selectmen and a town administrator, they don't have the capacity to handle all the projects. So what's the committee value? And those words should be improved, but I'd say expanded capacity to develop
To assess.
a capital plan to
Okay.
do for capital planning
Yes.
work. And then the continuity thing is, if we've got a committee with 4 people or 5 people, and we can make a pitch here that there's room for an additional person on the committee, that we're, potentially have 3-year terms that should be, not everybody should be leaving the same year. So we ought to talk about that at some point. But it's really helping them with the institutional knowledge.
You want to verbally say that or have a bullet point?
Well, that's the point of the second bullet point. So, about the no, I don't think we need the. Well, yeah, that's fine. We can in or out. I don't care.
Well, you could and then you could say if you don't like what's going on the committee. Okay.
No one's going to care until they hear it's $20 million to repair the stone pier, and then all hell will break loose.
Yes.
John, you ought to say something about this, that the ability to assess future capital needs is partly dependent on getting updated cost assessments or cost estimates. That we still don't know a lot of the cost factors there.
Right.
You're talking about this expand and improve.
Well, I'm just saying any of our assignments are all in the void of knowing what these capital large projects are going to cost.
Yeah.
Because we're still just sort of grappling with that.
Again, you guys can take a look at this and see, boil down the words or whatever. It's very easy to change. So,
Yeah, no, this is great, Chip. Yeah, I think in that I'll probably be speaking to a lot of them. I might simplify a few, probably abbreviate what's on the picture and add some of the stuff to the talking points.
yeah.
Is this a place where we want to recommend that they do the capital? What did I call it before? Capital replacement plan. I think we were talking about 2 topics ago in our agenda.
Yeah, capital needs assessment.
Capital needs assessment, getting a real professional prioritization of it. Not the new capital needs, but the plan for replacement and maintenance of existing capital assets.
Facilities assessments, right.
So you want to add something here?
Well, I'm just wondering if this is where John should hammer them on that or something.
About getting help with it all or professional?
Yeah, well, someone looking at the current capital assets and coming up with a real replacement plan.
Yeah, and it's like Jeff Westcott, one of the things he asked for in this next year is an engineering assessment of the transfer station.
Yep.
And where a lot of this gets confused and unprioritized, and this won't necessarily be part of the presentation, is, we need to maintain the fire department, but at the same time, they're talking about a new public safety building, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're shrinking the truck to fit in the current bay.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
Oh, yeah, good point.
So we're pretty much to the end, right? Which slide are we on?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. This is
Okay,
just
so I think we need to add one that says something, somewhere in here, we need to talk about, saving for capital expenditures is much cheaper than, having to pay for them with bonds. And a $10 million bond will cost us,
700 grand a year.
But over the life of it, it'll cost 25 times 700,000. So
yeah, and over 25 years, you're gonna pay
pay 17.5 million,
$1.5 million in interest, whatever, that example, some
7.5 million.
Yeah. I'll get those numbers for you, John.
I actually went in and, said, what's the annual cost of a $10 million, 25-year, 5% loan? And it was $709,000.
Yep. Jay had it right.
You multiply that times 25 and it came out to 1.7 whatever million. So,
Yep. On the other hand, you're paying for it in money that's a lot cheaper down the line.
On the other hand, my kids will be paying for it. Just
Or your grandkids.
it'll be the same situation that we've put them in with the federal government.
it's a Ponzi scheme.
But keep your hands off my Social Security.
Hey, don't worry, that's good until 2036.
I'm not. So there you go.
Okay,
All
let me send you guys an updated version of this and you can keep take a look at it.
Yeah.
That's
And,
where we're at here pretty soon.
I would propose we meet next Friday and,
I cannot, but you all go ahead.
okay, to finalize the slides. So then to try to finalize them or, be 90% done with the presentation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. You can go over presentations ad nauseum, and at some point it's it's talking points and then you read the room, and you can't control the questions they're asked. So I think I think we do that. Yeah, and I'll be leaving the next. Yeah, okay. So
We're done well in advance. My gut now says that it's pretty long and there's some redundancies in there, and so I'm going to
I'll see if-
focus on streamlining it a little bit. So
we've got to confirm that Richard Hackle can run the slides, and I can and he should be able to.
Is your presentation time set right now? It's the 16th in the evening?
well, the presentation we just looked at is a Saturday workshop on April 26th.
When I am in a board meeting in Reading. So there you go.
On the 26th?
Yep. It's the foundation I staff. It's their quarterly board meeting.
I'm going to see if they've got the 26th on the town calendar. I'm looking at that now.
I think they did. I mean, they asked me to put it on the other calendar.
Yeah, select board presentation and discussion. Yeah,
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Okay. So that's there.
Perfect conflict for me. I'm out.
Okay. We'll tell them to refer any certain questions to you. We'll have
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, Jim's not in the room. We'll have to ask him. Perfect.
we'll have your phone number handy.
Okay.
Okay. other discussion items? Uh, Chip, can you bring up I don't, this is probably not a 5-minute discussion, but can you bring up the last thing I posted on, under bond capacity?
Right. That was interesting.
This
Yeah.
one?
Yeah. So I got to bring it up over here because I can't read that. I'm on my template, but I'm on my tablet. I got to get the tasks. Yeah, and this was just a step towards, okay, can we get our arms around
One concern I have with this, John, is it's got a lot of moving variables on the same chart.
this isn't for presentation.
Okay.
This is just for, can we get comfortable with some, this is the two scenarios of debt capacity. All right, I've
But
got
this doesn't raise taxes, right? This just assumes tax base goes up at 4%.
Well, no, what it does, no, not exactly. So the top line takes the revenue, and for 2026, revenue equals expenditures in this case, right?
Right.
They've got 74,000 in there for Axiom. I took it out. So I'm starting with a lower number because one of my major concerns is when they figure out what's going on with the undesignated fund balance, if they can't take that money, I think the tax increase is going to be bigger than they're comfortable with. So I think they'll be looking for places to make cuts. So anyway, it started with a small number. And then I put 4% inflation in every year. So the top
Right.
line is what our total town budget is: school, municipal, capital, and everything else. And then I just plugged in 500,000 for the reserve, and I inflated that by 4%. And then I said, well, last year capital spending was 24% of our total budget. So I did three scenarios. If capital spending is 24% of that top line, 26% of the top line, 28% of the top line, what are the funds available for bonding? All right, so I took 24. If, for example, 2027, I took the top line of 4,000,004. Took 24% of that, subtracted 500,000, and that said there was 564 available for bonding. Okay, so then those calculations are done the same way for 10 years, whether you had 24% of your total budget was on capital, 26 or 28. Okay, so those were the funds available for bonding. Then I looked at additional operating dollars available. Oh,
Yeah, see, that's the variable that gets complicated, I think.
yeah. So, for example, when additional dollars available for operating, if you start with the top line, you spend this amount, you spend these percentages for capital, then you do a calculation that says, do you have enough to do the regular part of your budget? And you can see if you spent 26% or 28% of the budget on capital, there'd be a shortfall in operational funds.
Well, on the 28 side, not the 26 side.
On the 28 side, correct. All right. And then and then depending on when you do the bonding, which was down below. So for bottom line, for these three scenarios, I said, well, based on the capital funds that are available, if you do them in these years, you can do 9 million in capital under the 24% number. You can do 15 under the 28% of the number. But, you know, it depends on how you space them out. It all changes, right? If you wait a
Right.
year,
Yep.
if you wait a year, you get extra money that's available for reserve, or if you don't need it in the reserve, it's available for operational funding. So I was just trying to get my arms around scenario 1 versus scenario 2. So this would say if you spend 9 to 15, you got 9 to 15 million. If you spent 9, if you look up above, there's additional funds available for operations over 10 years of $1.4 million, and there's additional funds available for reserve accounts of 488,000. So there's $2 million that, you know, could be spent other ways. So that says we should be fairly comfortable with that $9 million category. If you try to spend the 15, well, you're short of operational funds by 721,000 or 70,000 a year on average. 70,000 is about a 2% tax increase to generate those funds.
Right.
And annual reserve funds, you're still okay. So if you increase taxes by 2% in an early year, you ought to be able to do the 15 million.
John, one quick question, if I might.
Yep.
Your capital reserve funding additions, that's how much you would annually put into your reserves, right?
Yeah. And that
Well,
500
wait, or is that in addition to what you've got up above?
That's my question.
Well, the additions. So up above, I said we're going to start with the assumption we need 500,000, and then that's inflated by 4% every year, right?
So
Okay,
this is
so-
in addition to the addition.
And then additional annual reserve numbers down towards the bottom of the sheet.
No, what I'm
Yeah.
saying, is in 2027, your
Yep.
reserve, you're setting aside for reserves 500,000.
Correct.
That's not in addition. That's the number.
No, that's the total reserve. Like this year, there's 795 in there.
Right.
right.
Okay. When I
Yeah.
looked at the list, I get a little nervous that number may be a tad low, even
Yep.
though you're going to be doing bonding.
Yep.
You know,
But
Good.
if I'm reading this right, if you're bonding at 20, if you're spending 24% of your capital, there's another 118,000 in 2027 down
right.
for reserve accounts. So it's really 618.
Right. I see what you're saying.
Well, I hope that's what I'm saying. I mean,
That's right.
I'm just
That's
reading
right.
this and trying to
That's
interpret
right.
it.
That's right. And then the next year there isn't as much left because that's a year you suck the money out to do bonding. Correct.
Right.
Okay.
So-
So,
Anyway, I was trying to get it on one page to get our arms around it, and it could be totally screwed up, but play with it.
I thought your other format was more useful for me when you kept the operating expenses inflated at 4% and
Yep.
created leftover for reserves plus debt service.
Yep.
Then followed it that way, and then you could play with options against that number more directly, I thought. This adds
Well,
one more variable in here. in the
That's
reporting.
up above somewhere.
Well, you took it out of this one. You had it previously.
Yeah. I'm saying that we didn't lose the previous versions.
Right, so what I'm saying is, rather than adjust your operating expenses on the 22, 26, 28 version, fix them. So we're focused on available for capital investment. And then play around with your scenarios on that, I think would, to me, be clearer. I don't know if anybody else, but
Okay. All right. Yeah, and I could do that on this same type of.
oh, sure. Except you
Yeah.
would not, you'd get rid of that section on operating dollar variations. You're putting a fixed scenario there.
Right.
Then you're
Okay.
saying, what have I got left for capital?
Okay. Got it. All right.
Reduces the variables by one, which helps, I think. But
Yep. Any other discussion items?
I move the approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
I
Second.
second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meet next Friday at 2. Jim can't be here.
I may be,
And-
I can come probably late. Round
Okay.
3, probably I can pile on.
All right. And we'll focus on the presentation and maybe I'll have some feedback. Maybe we'll have some feedback on from Bob, Vika, and fire department on the reserve account recommendations, which I will move forward to them. Anything
You
else?
might talk to Vika about this question of how she would react to a capital replacement consultant coming in sometime in the next few months. You don't want to get crossways with her if that raises some issue, but
That could be an
Yeah.
understatement.
Yeah, I actually wrote that around the follow-up with Vika,
right,
building and facilities professional.
yeah. I find the hiring of consultants is always a sensitive matter in Shabig.
Okay, thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Thanks.
There's a
Good to see you all. Thank you.
Yes, you
great,
too.
great music program tomorrow night, 5 to 7.
Yeah, we're getting that ready. Yeah, and I'm thinking a little bit. I'm gonna wait rather than just blast these slides off to you. Let me work on them a little bit. And yeah, but we will. Yeah, we
Well-
are down at the. Gonna fill up the church with singing people.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you all.
see ya.